Well, Inside Out 2 recently came out, so naturally my brother and I went to go see it, and in short, the movie has exceeded our expectations. Inside Out 2 tells a story that not only complements the first movie, but also tells an equally important message about one's emotions. So let's get right into it. We're the Two Cool Bros, and this is Coolio's review of Inside Out 2. I'll start off with a brief prop synopsis. The plot of the movie can be summarized in the following. Riley is a teenager, so in addition to her old emotions, she now has a handful of new emotions joining the fray. But when Riley learns her two best friends will not be going to the same high school as her, the anxiety within Riley stresses out about making sure that Riley makes a hockey team so that she will have new friends in high school. Anxiety suppresses the other emotions in the process in order to create a new sense of self for Riley, and this leaves the other emotions to go onto a journey to stop anxiety and get Riley's sense of self back. Now I will go over the characters, namely the emotions and their various roles in the film. As the leader of Riley's emotions, Joy once again takes on the role as the movie's main protagonist. She has completely maintained her character development from the first movie, thank God. Throughout the movie, she encourages and believes in sadness, now understanding that every emotion plays a vital role in Riley's life. However, while all the emotions are important, too much of one emotion can be very dangerous. This leads Joy to come into conflict with the main antagonist of the movie, a new emotion called anxiety. Anxiety is the leader of the new emotion. She is introduced as a nervous yet energetic girl with a disproportionate body, cleverly symbolizing that some people tend to blow things out of proportion when anxious. She starts off pretty friendly but quickly spirals into being controlling and tyrannical, suppressing the other emotions by quite literally bottling them up and tossing Riley's sense of self away in order to create a new Riley. This sudden shift change perfectly reflects how quickly anxiety can take over your mind and spiral out of control. While certainly an antagonist, it is important to note that anxiety is not a villain. Though she is very much misguided, she only intends to keep Riley safe by preparing her for the future. Then this is okay in small amounts, but during her unrestrained and tyrannical control of Riley's mind, anxiety puts too much pressure on Riley and ends up hurting her greatly. Envy is the smallest of the emotions, cleverly symbolizing that being jealous will make you feel small. Envy serves as anxiety's right-hand woman and is a bit of a second in command of the new emotions. Throughout the movie, Envy encourages anxiety schemes, only protesting when anxiety causes Riley to have a panic attack. Interestingly, this movie doesn't show envy as a particularly toxic or sinful emotion, despite the fact that envy is considered one of the 7 deadly sins. Rather, envy is depicted as a natural part of the human experience of longing for what one does not already have, especially when we see other people have it instead. Rather than being bitter, envy tends to admire others who have what Riley lacks, showing envy does not always have to be a hateful emotion. Back to the old emotions, we have sadness. Sadness already adventured with Joy throughout Riley's mind in the first movie, so this time around, our favorite little blueberry is sent on a side quest to allow the other emotions to return to headquarters, as well as hinder anxiety's tyrannical reign. Sadness once again shows how important she is by attempting to make Riley feel bad about sneaking into the coach's office in order to try to get her not to look at that notebook. However, Sadness ultimately gets foiled and recaptured by anxiety. However, she was able to last a while without getting caught, thanks to the help of one of the new emotions. Embarrassment. Embarrassment is quite a socially awkward fellow. He's also quite large, symbolizing that when you're embarrassed, you feel extremely noticeable. While originally serving as anxiety's enforcer, physically restraining the original emotions for her, embarrassment has a change of heart when he sees sadness, who begs him not to alert the other emotions of her presence. In an example of good writing, embarrassment's change of heart was actually foreshadowed in his introduction when anxiety described him as a really sweet guy. He doesn't talk until the end of the movie before getting embarrassed and shutting up again. It's smaller and more subtle, but the role of disgust is elaborated on more in this movie. Along with allowing Riley to detect and avoid gross things, disgust also detects social cues, letting Riley know when her friend makes a look that indicates that she's hiding something. Disgust is also fond of that video game character with an incredibly feeble attack, showing that there is a soft side to her sassiness as well. Anger also plays a relatively small yet important role, mostly in his funny interactions with the little kid show comedic relief character known as Pouchy, who provides him with dynamite to bail his gang out of trouble twice. Fear is in the same boat as anger and disgust, regarding playing a relatively small role, but he does take out a parachute to save his gang. And of the old emotions, he seems the most fond of anxiety, despite anxiety's antagonistic role in the movie. It's a neat callback to how connected fear and anxiety are. Of the new emotions, the one that plays the smallest role is definitely ennui, but that's a given since ennui is the literal embodiment of boredom and indifference. That being said, ennui still plays an important role, furthering the conflict by making Riley disrespect her friends in her sarcastic manner. She is also capable of controlling the console through her phone, something Sadness later takes advantage of, stealing Ennui's phone and causing her to freak out, much like a phone addict teen who lost her phone. Despite being lazy and apathetic, Ennui is still shown to care greatly for Riley, helping the other emotions stop Riley's panic attack and saying Riley can get bored, but is never boring herself. Now on to my biggest point, the themes. The themes and messages of Inside Out 2 are just as brilliant as the originals, and this is where the movie surpassed my brother and I's expectations. Based on the trailers, it seemed as though the second movie's message would basically be the same as the first one, but with anxiety learning that all the emotions have a purpose instead of joy. But instead, Inside Out 2 goes above and beyond and gives us at least 3 more very important messages that make the movie even deeper than you may assume. The first new message of Inside Out 2 is the dangers of uncontrolled anxiety. The movie shows us what anxiety is good for by showing anxiety get Riley on Val's good side, as well as showing her remember that they have a Spanish test to study for. Anxiety is okay in moderation when it is preparing you for future events that you know are going to happen. It's when anxiety shifts into being obsessed over several worst case scenarios or stressing over things outside of one's control, then this emotion becomes a problem. And we see this fully manifested in the climax of the movie, where anxiety causes Riley to suffer a panic attack after inadvertently hurting one of her teammates due to being blinded by anxiety. After all things get resolved, the movie ends with anxiety calming down in her special chair, literally taking a backseat. And that's exactly what you must do with anxiety sometimes, have it take a backseat. And the next new message of Inside Out 2 is that you aren't your emotions. Emotions are important, but they aren't what make you who you are. Hence why it's not a good idea to allow yourself to become controlled by your emotions. The movie centers around a concept known as Riley's sense of self. That is what makes Riley who she is. When anxiety goes rogue and takes over headquarters, she attempts to get rid of Riley's sense of self in order to make a brand new Riley. This represents Riley allowing her anxiety to control her into acting in a way that is not in accordance with who she truly is. This is best seen in the way Riley pushes her old friends away, something very uncharacteristic of her. After she gets anxiety under control at the end of the movie, Riley has a much better grip on her emotions as a whole. This is shown by Riley's sense of self directing joy to the control panel, implying that Riley is choosing to be happy. In other words, the movie ends with Riley having a higher degree of emotional intelligence, controlling and directing her emotions instead of her emotions controlling and directing her. And the third newer message of Inside Out 2 is that every part of you makes you who you are. While anxiety serves as the main antagonist, both anxiety and joy ultimately have to learn this lesson in the end. Anxiety had been throwing out any part of Riley that didn't line up with her vision for her, but joy and the other original emotions were basically doing the same thing at the beginning of the movie by tossing all of her negative memories to the back of her mind. This inadvertently caused Riley's sense of self to become very shallow and limited, simply repeating that she is a good person. But after all of her memories get properly integrated into the belief system, Riley's sense of self evolves to include every part of her, both her strengths and her flaws. It is by embracing the messiness of this complexity that Riley is able to become more secure about herself, with her emotions understanding not to suppress any part of what makes Riley, Riley, even if there is always room for growth. In conclusion, Inside Out 2 is a sequel that truly lives up to its potential. Is it better than the original? Arguably not, but it certainly complements the original, and unlike other movie sequels, Kung Fu Panda 4, it proves itself completely worthy of existing, making the franchise all the better for it. I hope you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content, and peace out!